to celebrate the life of Dolly West Shaer, known to you as Dolly, who died on the 1st of July at St. Peter's Hospital, Chertsey, with family by her side. She was 82 years old. My name is Ginny Collins. I'm from the British Humanist Association. I'm honoured to be leading this funeral today. Dolly is survived by her son, David, and daughter, Carol, daughter and son-in-law, Hill and Cleet, her partner, Ken, grandchildren, Robert, James and Nikki, their partners, Katrina and Tammy, 2 great-grandchildren, Harrison and Dylan, and Ken's daughter, Jan, and her family. On behalf of David, Carol and Ken, I would like to thank you for coming here today and for your support. You may have known Dolly as a family member, friend or colleague, or from one of the political organisations that she was involved with. However you knew Dolly, your presence here today is testament to the love and respect with which she was regarded. Dolly didn't hold religious faith. She believed that this life is the only one we have and that we should live it to the full. She would have wanted you to remember the life that she lived, and I hope you will feel that this funeral reflects the woman you knew and may have loved. Dolly was unique, and it is entirely natural that you should miss her deeply and wish her back in your lives. But take, if you can, some comfort from the thought that she lived a full, active, and interesting life right up until her death. And remember, too, that she is still a significant part of your lives. Carol is now going to read a poem written to Dolly by a former colleague, John Rafferty, the Community Relations Officer for Hammersmith and Fulham Council for Racial Equality, when Dolly resigned as chairman of the Education Group in 1980.
To share. Give me a woman of strength and determination, of sensitivity and imagination, of power and unequivocation, of a presence which makes it clear that she is there. Show me a woman delectable, delightful, of contradiction, yet sincere in pursuance of her conviction, of firmness, fairness, less inhibition. E'en in her absence, one's aware that she is near. Give me a woman of such gentle persuasion, of quiet speech with such intonation. Information is conversation, of a nature which lays it bare, thou canst but hear. Show me a woman steeped in deep emotion, of tears and cares, of feeling in dearly dealing true devotion, of recklessness with such calm precision. Authorities there, you're aware, she knows no fear. And if, perchance, thou dost not savour thine ambition for creation to bring about the universal fair and full condition, blame not thine eternal vision. You're another victim of the Percy times residing here, the last we share.
During this service, we will hear tributes to Dolly from people who knew her well. Before this, I'd like to capture a little of her early life. Dolly was born on the 22nd of May 1931 in the Middlesex Hospital, London. She was the eldest of 2 girls of Frank and Nellie West. Her father worked in a coffee shop, but trained as a carpenter in later years and was involved in politics and workers' rights throughout his life. Dolly was a young child during the war and saw and experienced firsthand the economic hardships imposed on households at this time. She was deeply affected by the absence of her father for much of her childhood. In 1937, he left to fight in the International Brigade in the Spanish Civil War, was held prisoner in Spain for many months before returning home. He worked long hours in the ARP and then signed up to join the army and continue his fight against fascism, eventually returning home around 1946. Dolly's father's political beliefs undoubtedly informed her own ideology and shaped her life. Dolly was 8 when the Second World War broke out. She learned to stand up for herself early in life and was very protective of her younger sister. When they were evacuated to Oxford to the care of a very unkind woman, Dolly demanded that they be rehoused. She was a bright girl and won a scholarship to Burlington Grammar School in Shepherd's Bush, but bore the burden of being the first scholarship girl to have entered the school. On one occasion, she was chosen to bake cakes for the young Princess Elizabeth. But since she was given real butter, real eggs, and lots of sugar to use, and was allowed to take the trial batch home, she didn't object. Dolly left school at around the time that her father returned from the war, and with money in scarce supply, she immediately went to work. One of her first jobs was as a path lab assistant at Middlesex Hospital, where there were numerous incidences involving guinea pigs and mice somehow managing to escape while in her care. At the earliest opportunity, she joined the Young Communist League, and it was during an organised camp trip that she met her future husband, Dolly Shaer. They were married in 1950, and in 1952 their first child, David, was born, and in 1955 a daughter, Carol. Dolly wasn't fond of housework, but her children describe her as an excellent cook, slightly experimental, with shelf upon shelf of cookery books. When Carol was still very young, Dolly went to work for the civil service, where she did a bit of typing and a lot of knitting. She'd knit or crochet anything, and David particularly remembers his knitted swimming trunks. Throughout the 50s, Dolly became increasingly involved in working for political parties and causes, and from the early 60s, the front room was used for local Communist Party meetings and socials. When Dolly's marriage to Maury ended, she found solace in her activist work, and it was through this that she met George. Like-minded and political, he was a supportive partner, and their relationship, which lasted many years, gave Dolly a great deal of happiness. During the 60s, she qualified as a teacher and worked briefly in primary before securing a lectureship with Hammersmith and West London College. The post involved developing and delivering courses for illiterate and innumerate adolescent immigrants. Special needs education in FE was a completely new area for everybody involved, and Dolly was at the very forefront of it. It was to become her vocation for the next 20 years and gave her an opportunity to do what she did best, fight for those in need. Jay Hodgetts, fellow former lecturer and friend, is going to tell us a little more about this period now.
I first met Dolly when in 1985 I applied for the post of foundation course tutor at Hammersmith and West London College. The foundation course was one of 4 courses run by the Department of Special Education Needs at the college. Dolly was the department's senior lecturer and course coordinator, and was the inspiration and driving force for special education in a college which, at that time, was one of the largest single-site colleges in Europe. The post I applied for came about after Dolly had been the victim of a mugging at the college. At work, Dolly was always known as Dot. The course had grown out of the original Appendix 2 provision set up in the mid-70s for students who were underachievers or who possessed a recognisable physical, mental or emotional difficulty. In addition, Dolly had been instrumental in establishing courses for young people who were recently arrived from the Caribbean, struggling having been plunged into a culture far removed from what they had been used to. Dolly had a real passion for fighting for and supporting those less able, and that fight became a real battle of minds at times. Special education was considered by some as low-level work and a certain disregard in academic circles. Of course, where you have battles, you can create enemies as well as friends and supporters. And I'm sure there are some who might have found Dolly a little difficult to handle. Dolly's determination to ensure the success, status, development and continuation of special education was a tour de force. Part of her toolkit was a certain Paddington Bear type stare, which was often used across the board from students who might have behaved inappropriately to specialist subject tutors who are less able to handle or understand our students, through to heads of department and right up to the principal of the college. And somehow, when on the receiving end of that stare, you just knew. As course tutor to a group of 16 to 19-year-olds, some with quite challenging behaviours, when negotiation between the student and tutor over any difficulties became impossible, or the situation demanded a little more forceful approach, our ultimate weapon was a visit to Dot's office. This did instill a certain degree of fear and dread in the student's mind. Remember the stare. Although Dolly's approach was so completely different to what the young person had experienced at school, the result was a somewhat deflated individual trying to get their head around the expectations of them as a young adult in an adult environment and how they were ultimately letting themselves down. I recall phrases such as, you do not have to come to college and we do not have to have you. And I get paid exactly the same whether you're here or not. Really turning the student's experience of education on its head. The students were always in no doubt as to who rules the Department of Special Education at Hammersmith and West London College. There were times when students failed to attend certain classes on their timetable. A sweep of the corridors and common rooms at the college by Dolly and me would usually end up with us finding the skiving students lurking in the common room. The glimmer of a Paddington Bear stare is usually followed by, please, if you're going to skive off lessons, can you do it properly and do it so we cannot find you easily? In 1986, the team, headed up by Dolly, produced an extensive paper on special education. We have become somewhat at the cutting edge of this area of work, and much of what had been established at Hammersmith and West London College became adopted by other colleges in one form or another. As a way of ensuring the higher profile of special education within the college, and placing herself in a strong position to gain respect for the work we were doing, and to fight the battles that had to be fought more effectively, Dolly became chair of the Faculty of General Education at the college. This was a role that few people were really willing to take on. The faculty was the largest, I think, of three in the college, and regular monthly meetings were always at 3:30 on Friday afternoons, with the main lecture theatre to accommodate the numbers of people. Dolly took the centre stage, addressing the faculty and managing the agenda, and the many and varied personalities with determination and courage. Woven into proceedings was always something concerning the equality of opportunity, embracing the diverse community of the college, ensuring that special education had a strong voice at every opportunity, and that those with complex needs were getting those needs met in some way. During the meeting, Dolly took copious notes, which after the meeting was over, back in her office, she and I tried to decipher to make some semblance of order out of the afternoon's proceedings. Not always an easy task. And I also witnessed on many occasions the contrast between the public face of Dot leading the faculty and the private face of Dolly, utterly shattered by the whole experience. But even then, still fired up and ready for the next step. The expletive deleted was frequently used back in the office. For me personally, Dolly has been a terrific inspiration, and I have learned so much that I know I would not have learned had I not known her. I have been inspired to have the strength to effectively fight those battles where attitudes and prejudice have had to be challenged. Dolly also gave me utter unconditional support through a period in my life that was very, very difficult for which I am eternally grateful. Over the years I have known Dolly, I feel I've almost become part of the family, and I thank you for asking me to be one of the speakers today to celebrate the life of this amazing and very special woman. And that comes with love from my partner Simon and myself.
Dolly retired in 1991, aged 60, and found she had more time to commit to her widespread interests. These were, principally, the arts, and she was instrumental in establishing Riverside Studios in Hammersmith, and of course, political causes. She joined the New Communist Party and there met Ken, a close companion these last 15 years. Alex Kemschel, chair of NCP, is going to say a few words about Dolly's involvement in the NCP now.
Dolly was a stalwart comrade and revolutionary of the lifelong membership of the communist movement. Her life was to contribute, in one way or another, the overthrow of the capitalist society of the state institutions which had been brought into being, to contribute to the liberation of workers from wage slavery. Dolly was a fighter for communism and fought with passion. She upheld the views of Lenin, Stalin and other comrades whose ideas are at the forefront of the international communist movement today. Dolly joined the New Communist Party of Britain in 1993 and became a regular attender and contributor at our schools. And it is one of these that she met Ken. It was through these schools that she imparted her considerable knowledge and experience to enable other comrades to understand the laws of social development and the fight against racism and fascism. Dolly never stood back. She volunteered to work in the finance department, where she put her political and organisational skills to effect by developing procedures and documenting the systems which provided the information to enable the National Treasurer to do the political job of directing the raising of funds for the party. Dolly was elected to the Central Committee by our National Congress in December 1999 and became National Treasurer in 2001. I was truly inspirational in ensuring that it was predominantly a political role linking theory with practice. Her first proposal was to increase the wages of the full-time workers, and her second, that branches should be reminded and encouraged to raise monies through political activity. When Dolly was re-elected in January 2002, she said that fundraising be emphasised as a political and regular activity and be treated as a major priority. She continued in this role right up until her death. Dolly was Director and Company Secretary of Pleckbond Limited, the party publishers. She mastered web-hosted government systems to record PAYE and VAT. Whereas some people might carry around a bunch of keys, Dolly carried around a bunch of USB memory sticks. The party's thanks goes to Carol and David, who I'm sure must have had to field countless calls relating to some aspect of spreadsheets, Windows, or the internet, and the hardware that makes it all happen. Though National Treasurer is an important role within our party, Dolly made her most important contribution to the party as a Central Committee member in determining our political direction. Dolly could always be relied upon to say her piece, and if the discussion was losing some momentum or direction politically, to put it back on track with some succinct points so that a concrete proposal could be made. Above all, Dolly was our link to the past, especially in the fight against fascism in Britain and the anti-fascist war in Spain. Other people will speak about that later, but Spain was where she expended most of her political energy. She wrote in the New Worker that the period, the anti-fascist war in Spain, is one of the proudest chapters in the history of the British Labour movement. This movement came together as a united front against fascism through the war against Franco and his cronies. They united to send ambulances, medical aid, food money, and not least 2,500 men and women, of whom 500 plus did not return. There are a growing number of people who think that this is part of our history and should not be lost. It is our duty to ensure that that work continues. Internationally, Dolly represented the new Communist Party as a guest of the Workers' League for the Restoration of the German Communist Party, and addressed the German Communist Youth School to discuss these very points on the anti-fascist war. On another occasion, delegation, this time to China, one of the things that stood out was how she could draw people of all ages to her. We had just visited an important historical revolutionary site in Zuni, southern China, and we were returning back to the hotel in a small convoy of official cars. It just so happened the convoy passed the local school at the start of their lunch break. As soon as the children spotted Dolly sitting in the back of one of the cars, they swamped it, blocking the street. The police were powerless to prevent the convoy of cars being trapped amongst the sea of children, all wanting to converse with the white-haired lady. The other was when we were about to rest in a picnic area with our official escort, which included police and military representatives. Well, we were spotted by a group of elderly, holidaying Chinese women who, without reservation, approached Dolly and asked through the interpreter whether they could have a joint photograph. This was duly done, and afterwards they taught us how to eat pomegranates. The photograph I have is one that I will always cherish. It shows Dolly with a group of Chinese women and holding hands with one of them. Dolly was above all an internationalist. She inspired people and was deeply loved by all who worked with her. Farewell to a stalwart comrade. We will miss you dearly, and we will know that you would want the struggle to go on. The struggle against racism and fascism, the struggle of the working class in all countries, for Marxism and Leninism and the cause of peace and socialism. Dolly, we thank you. I've also got a few words here from Jerry Gable, who is editor of Searchlight, the anti-fascist magazine. I've known Comrade Dolly since my earliest as an anti-fascist. She was everything that is important about the veterans of our movement. Whenever we met up over the years, there was always a smile and the question, how are you doing and how is Searchlight doing? Well, Dolly, we are doing okay as we approach our 50th birthday. And then whenever we are marching against the enemy, we know you are marching in the ranks of those who have and always will resist the twin evils of fascism and racism. Salute, Comrade Dolly Shaer. The struggle goes on. Thank you.